Can dogs hear ants whispering? It sounds like a totally silly question, right? But it actually gets to the heart of something truly fascinating. Our dogs are living in a world of sound that is, well, it's almost completely alien to us. So let's dive into the incredible science behind their auditory world. Think about it. When we walk through a park, it might seem pretty quiet to us. But for our dogs, they're hearing a whole symphony of hidden noises. We're talking about everything from the high-pitched squeak of a mouse burrowing underground to the ultrasonic hum coming from the electronics in our own homes. They're tuned in to all these frequencies that are just completely silent to us. So, what's their secret? How do they do it? Well, it's not just about them being able to pivot those adorable ears like little satellite dishes. It goes much deeper. It's about the very physics of their hearing. It's this evolutionary marvel that basically gives them auditory superpowers. Okay, let's look at the raw numbers for just a second. We humans, we can hear sounds up to about 20,000 hertz. But dogs, get this, they can pick up frequencies all the way up to 65,000 hertz. That is more than 3 times higher than our absolute best-case scenario limit. And seeing it on a chart like this really puts that massive gap into perspective, doesn't it? Our hearing range pretty much just stops right where theirs is just getting started in what's called the ultrasonic spectrum. So they aren't just hearing better than us, they're hearing sounds that for us literally do not exist. Here's a really great way to picture this. Imagine a piano. We can hear all the standard keys, right? Now imagine adding dozens and dozens of extra keys way over on the right-hand side of that piano, keys that are so high-pitched they're completely silent to us. Well, your dog can hear every single one of those extra notes. So when we throw around this term hertz or Hz, what are we really talking about? It's actually pretty simple. It's just a measure of vibrations per second. So a sound at 65,000 hertz is vibrating 65,000 times every single second. That's a frequency so incredibly fast that it's just beyond what our biology can even perceive. But it's not just about the high notes, It's also about volume or loudness. You can think of their ears as these super advanced, highly sensitive microphones. They're able to pick up sounds from 4 times farther away than we can. So the key thing to remember is they don't just hear higher sounds, they hear much, much quieter ones too. Okay, so this incredible hearing ability naturally leads to an even bigger question. When we talk to them, what are they actually processing in that brain of theirs? Let's dig into what's happening inside their head. You know what I'm talking about. Who's the best dog? We all do it, right? That high-pitched, kind of sing-songy voice we use when we talk to our dogs, it just feels instinctive. Well, it turns out there is a real scientific reason we do it, and it's actually perfectly tuned to the way their brains are wired. And of course, scientists have a name for this. They call it dog-directed speech. And no, it's not just baby talk. It's a very specific way of communicating that uses those high-pitched tones and a lot of emotional expression to really grab their attention and get the meaning across. And this is where things get really cool because it shows a fundamental difference in how our brains are wired. When we hear a word, say watermelon, our brain breaks it down into little pieces, right? Melon. But a dog's brain? It doesn't do that at all. It processes the entire sound as one single whole unit. There's a term for this. It's called word coherence. All that means is their brain is locking on to the complete sound shape of the word. Its melody, its rhythm, instead of picking apart the individual sounds like we do. It's a totally different way of decoding language. So think about it. For your dog, words like walk, sit, and treat aren't a collection of letters or syllables. To them, they are distinct auditory shapes. The whole acoustic signature of the word is what matters. And that's exactly why your tone of voice is just as important, maybe even more important than the actual word you're using. And that right there brings us to the emotional heart of all this. Because they are so tuned in to the musicality of our speech, the tone we use has a direct and even measurable impact on how they feel and how they act. There was this one really fascinating study where researchers actually categorized the way trainers spoke to dogs into these distinct emotional tones, like a nice tone, a neutral one, and a reprehensive or scolding tone. They wanted to find out if the emotional feeling of the speech itself, completely separate from the words, would actually change how the dogs reacted. And the results? They were crystal clear.
Using a nice tone directly led to more positive behaviors. You guessed it, more tail wagging. But a scolding tone? That actually led to fewer correct responses from the dogs and made them more likely to kind of back away. The tone, all by itself, literally changed their performance and how they express their emotions.
This all ties into a concept that researchers call owner warmth. A positive, friendly tone of voice does so much more than just give a command. It's sending a signal of safety, of security. It strengthens that social bond, and it makes your dog feel more connected to you and way more willing to engage. Okay, so what does all this cool science actually mean for us and our day-to-day lives with our dogs? Well, it gives us a really clear roadmap for how to communicate better and more effectively with our four-legged friends.
So here are 4 key takeaways you can use right away. First, go ahead and use that high-pitched dog-directed speech. Science says it really works. Second, always focus on your tone. A warm, positive voice is what builds trust. Third, be consistent. Try to use the same words and the same tones for your commands so your dog can really lock on to that unique sound shape. And finally, number 4, pay attention to how they respond. Their body language is going to tell you everything you need to know about whether your message is getting through.
All right, so after diving into this incredible world of sound, let's circle all the way back to where we started with that slightly absurd but very curious question. So can dogs actually hear ants whispering? Realistically, probably not. The physics of how sound travels just don't really work that way. But the fact that we even ask a question like that just goes to show how much we recognize that their hearing is on a whole other level. Their world is filled with sounds so high and so quiet that to us, it might as well be magic. Because the real takeaway here isn't about insects. It's about us listening back to them. After everything we've just learned about how they hear us, maybe the most important question we can ask is this: what is your dog, with all its unique barks, whines, and growls, trying to tell you right now? This whole exploration was built on the incredible work of researchers in fields like bioacoustics, animal behavior, and neuroscience. Here are some of the key sources that we drew from to put this together. Thanks so much for joining us.